Fire in her eyes, the red sky burned above the colony ruins. Thick smoke curled through shattered towers as emergency sirens howled like wounded beasts. Everything was chaos, flames, falling debris, panicked footsteps. Civilians ran in every direction, clutching bags, dragging children, or calling out names already lost in the noise. Cole Jensen stood on the upper balcony of the main power station, watching it all. His cum was dead. The evacuation orders had gone out 15 minutes ago, but he stayed behind. Someone had to shut down the fusion core manually. If it overheated, half the quadrant would go up in a shockwave. That was the plan: get in, shut it down, and go. But then he saw her, down below, walking alone through the fire like she didn't belong to this world, was a child. She moved slowly, but without hesitation. Her small feet stepped over burning rubble, past dead drones and broken glass. Her skin was pale blue, barely visible under layers of soot. Her long white hair trailed behind her like smoke, and a shattered pendant swung around her neck. Her eyes, large and softly glowing violet, stared forward, focused, determined. Cole squinted through the cracked glass. A child, but no one else stopped. No one noticed her. Cole grabbed his jacket, slammed the manual override on the fusion panel, and bolted from the station. His boots skidded on ash-covered metal as he raced down 2 flights of stairs, lungs burning from smoke. He dodged falling beams and flaming support wires, weaving through abandoned structures like a man possessed. "Hey," he called out. "Kid, wait." The girl didn't run. She turned her head calmly, eyes finding his in the firelight. She didn't speak, just stood still, like she'd been waiting for him. He dropped to one knee beside her, panting. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. He glanced around. No parents, no guards, just destruction, and the body of a large alien lying a few meters behind her, burnt, unmoving, one hand outstretched toward her, now forever frozen in place. Cole lowered his voice. "That was your father." The girl nodded once. He looked into her eyes, unsure what to say. "I'm sorry." Her lips parted slightly, and in a voice so soft he almost missed it, she whispered, "He told me to walk through the fire. He said the right person would follow." Cole's chest tightened. He reached out slowly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You shouldn't be alone." She looked up at him, studying his face as if she needed to be sure of something. Then she asked, so gently it broke something inside him, "Will you be my father?" The world seemed to stop. Not the fire, not the chaos, just everything inside him. The weight of her words hit harder than any explosion. This child, this alien child, was not just asking for safety. She was asking for love. Cole didn't speak at first. His throat had closed up. But then he nodded. Double quotes. "Yeah, I will." She blinked. Once. No smile, no tears. Just a quiet acceptance, as if something ancient inside her had finally settled. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked down at her broken pendant. "Nari." "Okay, Nari. Let's get out of here." He wrapped his jacket around her small shoulders. It hung off her like a curtain. Then he scooped her up carefully and ran back through the heat, into the service tunnels beneath the grid. The world burned above them, but in the darkness of the tunnel, Nari's glow lit the way. They didn't speak. She held his shirt tightly, but didn't cry. Her fingers clung like she'd learned long ago not to let go once you find something worth holding. Hours passed before they reached an abandoned repair bay outside the colony's blast zone. Cole sealed the entrance and checked for drones. None nearby. Just silence. He sat her down on a crate and offered her water. She drank it slowly, like it might vanish. "Anyone else coming for you?" he asked. She shook her head. "You hungry?" She hesitated, then nodded. He pulled a ration bar from his bag. She broke it in half without a word and handed the larger piece to him. He stared, stunned. "I was taught to share," she said softly. Cole smiled, touched by her calmness. "Thank you." They sat together in the dim light of a broken work lamp. Cole watched her carefully. Nari didn't act like a normal child. She didn't fidget or cry or ask questions. She watched, listened, measured. "You've been through this before," he said quietly. She didn't reply. Later, as she lay curled up on a blanket he'd laid out, Cole sat nearby, watching her sleep. Her body glowed faintly, casting soft patterns on the wall like moving stars. He pulled the broken pendant from her collar and examined it. 2 figures were etched into the metal, one tall, one small. She'd walked through fire for this. She'd whispered a question. No child should ever have to ask. And he'd answered, because he was ready, but because she needed someone who wouldn't walk away. The silence between stars, the silence in the repair bay, wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with everything unsaid between a man and the alien child who had called him father. Outside, the wind whispered through the collapsed ducts, carrying Ash and dust from a city that no longer existed. Cole sat by the lamp half asleep, rifle in his lap. Every so often he glanced at the girl. Nari had curled into the blankets like a leaf, her glow dimmed to a soft blue hue. But even in sleep her fingers stayed curled around his jacket sleeve. He'd known war, known loss, but this was something else entirely, morning if it could be called, that came with a faint shift in the shadows. The sky above was still stained with smoke, but the tremors had stopped. Whatever was left of the colony had collapsed overnight. Cole stepped outside. The bay's sealed doors, boots crunching over broken steel. The air was thinner now, laced with ionization from atmospheric damage. He looked toward the east, where the mountain edge marked the border of free space. One more outpost before unregulated territory. One more place that might not shoot on sight. Inside, Nari stirred. She sat up without a word, eyes adjusting quickly to the dimness. He knelt beside her. "We can't stay here, kid. The scavengers will come next." She nodded, already knowing. He packed what little gear he had left. A half-burned medkit, a thermal blanket, some purified tablets. No working comms, no allies, just a vague path through terrain most humans avoided and a child who trusted him without question. Before they left, Nari turned back. She pressed her small hand against the rusted wall and whispered something in her native tongue, melodic, sad, reverent. "A goodbye," he asked. "To the ones who won't follow," she said. They started walking. At first, she stayed close, her small legs quick but not hurried. She didn't speak often, but when she did, her questions were precise. "Why do humans bury their dead underground?" "Because we're afraid to forget them," Cole said, "and maybe afraid they'll see us move on." She nodded, like she'd heard something similar from another species. As they reached the canyon pass, Cole noticed her stumbling. He paused. "You okay?" She sat on a flat stone, pulling up her sleeve. Her arm was robent where the flames had caught her. Blisters ran in uneven trails across her forearm. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I didn't want to slow you down," he swore under his breath. From his pack, he pulled the medkit. The antiseptic stung, and her jaw clenched, but she made no sound. "You're tough," he muttered. "My mother said the same before the soldiers came." He didn't ask what happened next, he could guess. Soldiers, colonizers, opportunists, the kind who didn't care what bled or burned, as long as credits flowed. But Nari's silence said more than her words. She had survived because she was told to. She had walked through fire because her father believed someone would follow. And Cole had they traveled until nightfall, camping beneath a crumbled bridge suspended over the chasm. Wind howled between the steel cables like a grieving spirit. Cole lit a small fire from dried vegetation he found along the trail. As they sat beside the flames, Nari stared into the flickering light. "Why did you say yes?" she asked suddenly. "Looked up. You could have walked away, like the others. Why didn't you?" Cole rubbed the back of his neck. "I've asked myself that a dozen times, I guess. Because you looked at me like I was already the answer." Nari didn't respond for a moment. Then she said softly, "You sounded like him. Not your voice, just how you stood there. Like you wouldn't break." "I do break," Cole said. "All the time. But you don't run." "No, I don't." That night, as she fell asleep again beneath the torn blanket, Cole sat upright, scanning the skies. Drones were likely still hunting for survivors. He couldn't risk lighting a signal. But deep inside, something had shifted. He wasn't just running from war anymore. He was running with purpose, with someone who needed him more than he needed peace. In the middle of the night, he felt a tug at his sleeve. He turned. Nari hadn't woken fully. She just reached for his hand in her sleep, gave it to her. And didn't let go. No blood, just belonging. The next morning brought a strange stillness to the world. The wind had died down. The sky was a dull silver streaked with old plasma trails from retreating ships. Cole woke first, checking the horizon with cautious eyes. Nari was still curled beneath the blanket, her hands tucked beneath her cheek like a child dreaming of safer days. Cole crouched near the cliff edge. From here he could see the jagged ridge that bordered the final drop into unregulated space, a place where patrols were scarce and names didn't matter, a place where no one would care if a human walked beside an alien child. He glanced back at her. She was small, fragile looking, but he knew better now. Nari had walked through fire without flinching. She didn't just carry her father's pendant. She carried the weight of loss without ever asking to be saved. She stirred. Her eyes opened slowly, violet in the morning light. "Are we close?" she asked, voice still coated in sleep. "Closer than we were yesterday," Cole replied. "There's an old refueling station just past the ridge. If it's still active, we might find supplies. Maybe a ride out." She nodded, not questioning, not fearing. They walked again, side by side, as they reached the cracked old service road that wound up the ridge. Nari spoke. My people never stay in one place. We drift, hide. We don't build homes, just hiding places. Cole looked down at her. You don't like hiding, do you? She shook her head. I don't want to survive just to keep running. You won't. Not anymore. She paused mid-step. You say that like you mean it. I do, Cole said. The service road curved sharply, bordered by jagged steel fences, half swallowed by the planet's dust. Halfway up, they found what remained of a patrol outpost. It had been abandoned hastily. Lights flickered inside. A single COMM relay dish sat limp on its post, partially melted at the edge. Inside the building, Cole found emergency rations, an energy cell, and miraculously a working med scanner. Nari sat quietly as he checked her vitals. You're low on oxygen saturation, he muttered. Your species adapted to different atmospheres, colder ones, cleaner ones, but I'll adjust. I always do, he smiled faintly. You shouldn't have to, as he packed the supplies. Nari picked up a shard of glass from the floor and stared at her reflection. Her white hair was tangled, her face was smudged with dust. Her pendant swung near her collarbone, still cracked. Do I look human yet? She asked. Half-joking. Cole stopped what he was doing. You don't have to look like me, he said, stepping closer. Family isn't about blood or skin or where we're from. It's about who stays when everyone else leaves. She blinked. Then we're family. If you want to be, she nodded once. Then I want to stay. He didn't say anything for a moment. His throat felt tight again. Then I'll make sure you can. They left the outpost behind, climbing the ridge as shadows lengthened. At the top, a vast plateau opened up. In the center stood a tall metal spire. What remained of the old refueling station. It was scorched, tilted slightly, but still alive, and beside it a ship. Small, rusted, but intact. Cole held up his scope. Short-range hauler, probably remote-locked, but we might be able to override it. Will it take us far enough to disappear? As they descended toward it, Nari suddenly stopped. A group of figures had emerged near the ship. 3 of them. Not scavengers, not refugees. Hunters. Their armor was sleek, marked with the red insignia of the Satha coalition known for bounty enforcement across human and alien lines. One of them held a scanner. It pulsed faintly, then locked direct at Nari. Cole stepped in front of her. Stay behind me. Nara's voice trembled. They're tracking my DNA, not for long. He led her behind a broken tanker. His mind raced. The hauler was their only chance. But if the Satha wanted her alive, they'd be careful. Cole crouched and opened the side panel on a power coil. He started rewiring, fingers moving faster than he thought possible. Can you run? He asked her. Yes. If I say now, you go for the ramp, you don't stop. You understand? Her small hand found his and squeezed. I won't leave you. You won't have to, just trust me. One of the hunters shouted something in a garbled dialect. Cole finished bypassing, the lock sparks spitting from the panel. He whispered. Now. Nari ran. The hunters turned too late. Cole stood up, rifle in hand, and fired 3 precise shots. One slammed into the scanner, one into a knee plate, the third into a fuel drum beside them. The explosion knocked them back, throwing fire and dust into the air. Nar. I reached the hauler's ramp and turned to Cole. I'm coming. He sprinted after her as the side door groaned open. Inside, the cabin flickered to life. He jumped in just as the fire reached the platform. He hit the ignition. The hauler groaned, coughed, then lifted off unsteady but flying. As the ground fell away beneath them, Nari stood in the co-pilot's seat, her hair glowing again. You came, she whispered. I told you, I don't run. She looked at him for a long moment, then she stepped forward, climbed into his lap, and leaned her head against his chest. He wrapped his arms around her and held her close, as stars filled the sky ahead. Stars don't ask where you're from. The stars outside the viewport shimmered like distant candles, scattered across the endless dark. Inside the cockpit of the battered hauler, the silence was soft and steady. It was a kind of quiet Cole hadn't felt in years, not the silence of danger, but the kind that comes after the storm has passed. Nari was asleep in the co-pilot's chair again, her arms tucked across her small body, her breathing light, and even a faint inner glow had returned, casting a pale violet hue across the metal walls. She looked peaceful, almost safe. Cole leaned back, exhaling slowly. His hand still trembled slightly from the earlier firefight, but adrenaline had given way to something heavier. Relief, maybe, or the quiet pressure of responsibility settling in his chest. She had no one else, and now she had him. He reached over gently and adjusted a loose strap on her seatbelt so she wouldn't slump forward. Outside, the hauler passed through the edge of unregulated space. That meant no beacons, no patrols, and no help if something went wrong. The nav system blinked, barely functional. The ship had taken more damage than he thought. Engine coolant was bleeding into one of the aft chambers. The life support was stable, but just barely. He started running diagnostics, eyes scanning the broken interface. Then a voice stirred beside him. "You don't sleep much," Nari said softly. Cole turned. She was watching him now, not fully awake, but aware. "Not when I'm flying a stolen ship held together with duct tape and bad luck," he muttered. She smiled faintly. "You joke more now." "I do," she nodded. "That means you're not afraid." He paused. "Maybe not for myself." She looked out the window, eyes locked on a distant cluster of stars. "Do you think we'll find somewhere that doesn't care what I look like?" He hesitated. "Some places don't care who you are, as long as you bring credits," he said. "But that's not what you're asking." "No," she whispered. "I'm asking if there's a place we can be real." He didn't have an answer. "Not yet." After a moment, he said, "There's a moon on the far edge of the Darnus cluster. No central government. Lots of independent colonies. They take in refugees sometimes. You won't be the only one who doesn't belong, but we will belong. We'll try." Nari closed her eyes again, and Cole could see the strain pulling at her small face. She was exhausted, but she never asked to stop, never complained. That worried him more than anything. Children should cry, should scream and ask questions, but Nari, she had grown used to silence, too used to survival. He stood up and moved to the supply locker in the back, found an old maintenance suit, ripped it into size-appropriate pieces. Within the hour, he had stitched together something wearable, basic but warmer than the thin clothes she had. When he returned, she was sitting up again, hugging her knees. "I had a dream," she said. "Yeah, I was standing in front of a field. There was a door, just floating there. On the other side, it was bright, it smelled like flowers. My father stood in the light. He smiled at me, but he didn't say anything. He just pointed behind me, and I turned around and you were there. And you said, 'You don't have to go alone.'" Cole swallowed. "Dreams like that don't come for no reason. He trusted you. Even before he died, he said someone human would come. That he felt it. That's a lot of faith to put in a species we haven't treated your kind too kindly. Not all humans, just the ones who matter." She said it with such certainty that it silenced him. They passed through a debris field an hour later, of a ruined trade convoy, floating endlessly in the black. Cole maneuvered carefully, avoiding larger pieces. Among the wreckage, a distress beacon flickered weak, but alive. "Someone might still be out there," Cole muttered. "Can we check?" Nari asked. He paused. She didn't say it like a demand, more like a test. He nodded. "We can." They found the pod half buried in a drifting chunk of hull. It was cracked, frost covering the windows, but the emergency heat was barely holding. Cole pried it open with the hauler's loader arm. Inside was a young girl human, maybe 10 years old. Her skin was pale, lips blue, but she was breathing. Cole stared. Nari touched his arm. "We can't leave her." "No, we can't." They brought her on board, wrapped her in thermal cloth. Her name was Taya. She hadn't spoken a word yet, just stared with wide eyes at the stars, then at Nari, not with fear, with curiosity. Cole watched as Nari took her hand and whispered something in a soft, unknown language, and Taya smiled. That night, as the hauler drifted toward the edge of the Darnus cluster, Cole sat by the cargo bay and looked at them too. Children from opposite ends of the galaxy, one glowing faintly, one shivering but alive. He had no idea how they'd survive tomorrow, but for the first time, he wasn't alone in the dark, and neither were they. The family we choose. 3 days passed. 3 days of drifting through fringe systems, skimming asteroid belts, and dodging stray cumbursts from bounty ships. The hauler creaked with every turn, every acceleration, a prayer. But it held together because Cole made sure it did. Inside, life was quiet, in a way Cole had never experienced before. Taya, the girl they rescued, still hadn't spoken a word, but she had begun to trust. She followed Nari everywhere, watched her every movement like a younger sister watching an older one who had figured out how to survive the universe. And Nari, she had changed. There was still the glow beneath her skin, still the careful steps and quiet voice, but now she laughed softly, but clearly. She taught Taya words in her language, showed her how to trace constellations on the ship's ceiling panels. She was becoming something more than just a survivor. She was becoming a sister, a daughter. Cole sat near the engine bay that evening, recalibrating a coolant pipe when he heard footsteps. "She's talking now," Nari said from behind him. He looked up. Taya, she whispered my name today. It came out like a sigh, like it took all her strength. Cole leaned back against the bulkhead. That's more than most say in a lifetime. Nari sat beside him. She doesn't ask to go home. I think she knows there's nothing left. He nodded. Sometimes silence is a kind of mourning. They sat in quiet for a while, then Nari reached into her pocket and pulled out a thin metal disc. What's that? Cole asked. My father left it with me. It was buried in my coat lining. She handed it over. The disc glowed faintly, projecting a tiny holographic map, multiple planets, orbit lines, and a blinking red marker. He told me it was a place we could be safe, she said, but I never knew where it was. Until now. Cole studied the projection. The marked planet was in the Saran Drifter, long-forgotten stretch of space rumored to be uninhabitable. Radiation, storms, collapsing moons, pirate dens. It wasn't exactly the safest path, but that didn't matter. Can the ship make it? She asked. Maybe if I strip out the backup systems and reroute power to the core. We'll lose shield capacity, but we might outrun trouble. You're willing to risk it? For you, yeah. Her eyes softened. You always say yes, even when you should say no. I say yes when it matters. That night, Taya fell asleep in Nari's arms in the back of the cargo bay, her head resting against the faint pulse of Nari's glow. Cole watched from the door. For a long time, he had believed family was something you were born into, but this was something built, and it was stronger than blood. Just before sunrise, a proximity alarm shrieked through the ship. Cole leapt to the controls. A black silhouette appeared in the viewport, a small pursuit craft, sleek, military-grade, and fast. Not pirates, Cole muttered. Too clean. He flicked through the scanner. No ID tag. Cloaked registry. Definitely Sartha Tech. A bounty ship. They found us, he whispered. Nari appeared at his side. They always do. Cole made a decision. Without speaking, he pushed the engines to full burn, diving into a nearby gravity trencher, rippling corridor of warped space left behind by ancient stellar activity. The hauler rattled violently. Sparks flew. Panels fell from the ceiling. Taya clung to Nari, eyes wide with fear, but Nari didn't flinch. She held her, humming a quiet tune under her breath, something her mother must have sung before the war took her voice away. Ship stayed on their tail. Then something strange happened. Nari stepped forward, placed her hand on the ship's console, and closed her eyes. A light pulsed through her palm, bright, pulsing, controlled. The navigation system flickered, then locked onto a corridor through the gravity trench that didn't even show on Cole's maps. What are you doing? He asked, stunned. My kind, we remember things in patterns. My father taught me how to read the pull of gravity. This trench, it speaks, and I can hear it. The hauler turned hard left, following the impossible route she marked behind them. The bounty ship tried to follow and vanished into a rift of unstable space. Gone. Cole stared. Remind me never to doubt you again, he breathed. Nera's voice was soft. I didn't just survive, Cole. I learned. I listened. I remember. They cleared the trench an hour later, exiting into quiet space. Stars above them, vast and endless. Ahead, the planet on the map. It shimmered faintly in the distance, part green, part gold, like a gem tucked between the stars, and it felt like hope. Taya slept again. Nari sat beside her. Cole set the ship's heading and leaned back in his seat, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. For now, they were safe. For now, they were still together. The place that shouldn't exist. The ship coasted through the upper atmosphere, metal panels creaking as it adjusted to the planet's gravity. From the cockpit, the surface looked impossibly like a dream drawn by a child who had never seen war. Rolling meadows stretched 4 kilometers, broken by shimmering lakes and winding rivers. Trees taller than city towers reached toward a golden sky, their leaves glowing faintly in soft shades of turquoise and violet. There were no defense grids, no orbital cannons, no fleets patrolling the skies. Just peace and silence. Is this the right place? Cole whispered. Nere stared out the viewport, her face unreadable. It's exactly how he described it. The ship touched down near the edge of a forest, where the grass swayed like it was breathing. As the ramp lowered, warm wind rushed inside, carrying a scent that reminded Cole of childhood rain, soil, wildflowers, a place untouched. He lifted Taya from her sleep and carried her down the ramp. Nari walked just behind him, her pendant glowing faintly again, as if it had found home before they did. No one greeted them, no guards, no welcoming committee, just stillness. Do you think it's abandoned? Cole asked. No, Nari said quietly. It's watching us. They walked for half an hour along a barely visible trail before they reached a clearing. In the center stood a stone structure, old, rounded, grown over with vines and moss. It wasn't tall, but it radiated something ancient, like it had been waiting centuries for someone to arrive. Nari stepped forward and placed her hand on the stone. Nothing happened. Then she whispered a word. One Cole couldn't understand. A sound like wind moving through crystal. The stone pulsed. A doorway shimmered into existence, just like in her dream. From it, a figure stepped out. It wasn't human, nor was it fully alien. Its features shimmered, partly organic, partly light. Genderless.com, neither threatening nor welcoming, just present. You've come, it said. Cole instinctively moved in front of the children. Nari stepped beside him. You knew my father. The being nodded. He was one of the last, a keeper of memory. He protected this place until the war tore your people from the stars. Why here? She asked. Because this world remembers who you were before fear shaped you. And now, it remembers you again. Cole felt something deep inside shift. The way this world felt alive but undemanding. It wasn't a military base. It wasn't a sanctuary designed to keep people out. It was a place built for healing. The being turned to him. You are the one she chose. I didn't know what I was saying yes to, Cole replied. That is what makes it pure. It gestured toward the stone door. You may stay, if you wish, or leave. This world will not bind you, but it will remember you. Cole looked down at Taya, then at Nari. What happens if we stay? You become part of something older than war. You become remembered, protected. Nara's voice was barely a whisper, and the ones chasing us. The being looked at her with something that might have been sorrow or understanding. They won't find you here. They can't. Cole looked at the children, Taya still silent, but watching everything with wide, understanding eyes, and Nari standing tall, her face calm and resolved. He turned back to the being. Then we stay. The being stepped aside. As they passed through the stone doorway, warmth enveloped them. It wasn't heat, it was belonging. A sensation like 100 arms wrapping around you without ever touching. Inside the structure was a dome, lit from within by bioluminescent vines that pulsed like heartbeats. In the center, a pool of crystal clear water shimmered, and around it, soft beds of moss and flowered growth spread out in perfect silence. Taya ran toward one, and fell into it with a laugh. It was the first sound she'd made that wasn't fear. Cole stared, overwhelmed. Is this what you saw in your dream? He asked Nari. She nodded slowly, and more. They lived in the dome for days, then weeks. No one aged. Not quickly, anyway. The food they gathered from the forest sustained them. The air kept them strong. Even the hauler parked outside slowly healed metal, mending like skin over time. One evening, as stars blinked overhead, Cole sat on the grass outside the dome, watching fireflies hover like sparks from a forgotten campfire. Nari sat beside him. You don't ask about Earth much, he said. She looked up at the sky. Do you miss it? Sometimes, but I don't think I'd trade this. She was quiet a moment, then said, You know I'm not really your daughter. He looked at her. I know, but I feel like I am. He nodded. That's the only part that matters. She leaned her head against his shoulder. You're not my real father, she said. But you were the first person who didn't see me as a burden. You didn't ask me to prove I was worth saving. You just stayed. I didn't know how not to. She looked up, her eyes gleaming under the starlight. Then you're more a father than most ever get. Not of my blood, but of my heart. The seasons didn't change the way they did on Earth. On this world, time moved like a slow river, calm, wide, patient. Life didn't race forward. It unfolded. Days bled into one another like brush strokes on an infinite canvas. And still, Cole stayed. At first, he counted time in days. Then in stories. Nara and Taya thrived. Not just survived, thrived. They laughed often now, ran barefoot through the glowing fields, climbed trees with leaves that sang when touched. They built rituals out of simple things. Breakfast under the twin suns. Night walks beneath bioluminescent stars. Storytelling circles around the still pool in the dome. Sometimes the ancient being who had no name but many faces would sit with them and listen. It didn't speak often. It didn't need to. Its presence alone calmed things the way still water does after a storm. Cole had grown quieter too, not because he had less to say, but because he had finally learned how to be fully present. One night, while Nari braided Taya's hair by moonlight, Cole stood at the edge of the forest with the ancient being. You've made this place more alive since you came, it said. I think we were the ones who needed life, Cole replied. You gave these children something no warlord or empire could. He nodded slowly, a chance to stop running. The being studied him, and if the galaxy finds them again, then I stand between them and the storm like I always have. The being smiled, not with lips, but with energy. Then you are their father, entirely. Cole turned back to the dome. Through the translucent walls, he could see Nari asleep now. Taya curled beside her like a shadow made warm. He remembered that first night, the cold, the fear, that trembling voice, "Will you be my father?" And his answer that had changed everything that night. He made a decision not just to protect them but to become something more. The next morning he spoke with the being again. "I want to give them more than safety. What would you give them?" "Name a future, a place to return to, even when I'm gone." The being listened without speaking. "I want this world to be theirs. It already is. No, I want it remembered, shared. I want others like them to know they are not alone." The being's form shimmered gently. "That path is harder than peace. You invite attention, I don't care. You may lose everything. I already lost everything once," Cole said. "I'm not afraid to fight for what I built with my own heart." The being nodded. "Then the choice is yours." It began with a beacon, not one of war, but one of invitation. Cole reconfigured the Holler's old-come array and sent out a message on all refugee frequencies. The words were simple. "If you are hunted, if you are tired, if you have no one left, come, there is a place that will not turn you away. We found peace, and you can too." He didn't know how many would hear it, but it was enough to send it. The months that followed changed everything. Ships arrived slowly at first, wounded, scattered, fearful, aliens with scars, children with no names, humans rejected by their own kind. And they came not because they believed, but because someone had offered. Cole met each ship personally. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He wasn't just a mechanic or a runaway. He had become something else entirely. A father, a protector, a legend. The dome became a sanctuary, the world became a village, and the children, they became the future. One evening, as Nari stood atop the ridge, overlooking their growing settlement, she turned to Cole and said, "I still remember, the cold place, where no one spoke, where no one looked at me." "And now?" he asked. "Now I remember what it means to be seen. You taught me that." He smiled. "You showed me what it meant to stay." She leaned against him and whispered, "I don't call you father because I have to. I know I call you father because you chose to be." Taya ran up behind them, dragging a blanket and asking for another story. Cole knelt beside her, scooping her into his arms. He looked up at the stars blinking and wide. Somewhere, the galaxy still burned. Wars raged, empires fell. But here, in this impossible place, a man who had nothing left had built a family, not from blood, but from love, and he never walked away.